What if I told you that the answers to some of our biggest, most modern problems, things like freedom, order, justice, weren't in some new technology, but in a text that's over 3,000 years old? It's a pretty bold claim, right? But the Book of Deuteronomy offers what you could call a blueprint for a free and lasting society. It's as much a political theory as it is a religious text. So, let's dig in. This is the fundamental tightrope that every free society has to walk. I mean, we all want liberty, right? The freedom to choose our own way, to live our lives without someone telling us what to do. But here's the problem. Without any kind of guardrails, that exact same freedom can just spiral into total chaos, where it's just might makes right. It's a paradox that has stumped political thinkers for centuries. How do you let people be free without the whole social fabric just dissolving? And then, of course, you've got the other side of that coin, the equal and opposite danger. In our search for safety and stability, it's so easy to create systems of order that are so restrictive they end up crushing the very freedom we wanted to protect. The state, trying to keep everyone safe, can become the biggest threat of all. And suddenly, order is just a nice word for tyranny. It becomes a gilded cage. So into this ancient tug-of-war steps the Book of Deuteronomy. Now, don't just think of this as some dusty old list of rules. It's actually a pretty radical design for a society. It's a framework for a kind of liberty that isn't lawless, but is actually governed by law. It's a really deep attempt to answer those two huge questions we just asked, and its ideas have echoed for thousands of years. So how does this whole blueprint get started? Well, it doesn't begin with a coronation of a king or military conquest or some big show of force. No, it begins with a command that sounds deceptively simple. And it's not a command to do something, but a command to listen. The entire structure, everything we're about to talk about, rests on this one powerful concept, Shema. Now, this word is so much richer than just its simple translation. It doesn't just mean, to hear a sound with your ears. It means to listen deeply, to process, to understand, and then ultimately to act on that understanding. It's the difference between just hearing noise and truly getting a principle. And just in case you had any doubt about how important this idea is, get this. The word Shema appears 92 times in Deuteronomy alone. This isn't a footnote. It's the constant, steady drumbeat of the entire book. The society it's imagining isn't built on people just silently doing what they're told. It's built on shared principles that are heard, understood, and agreed upon. You could even call it a society based on informed consent. And this is the Shema. It's the most important prayer in Judaism, and it's the ethical center from which everything else radiates. It's a call for a total commitment that comes not from fear but from listening, from understanding, and from love. And this is so important. A society based on this idea is, at its heart, a voluntary one. It's really no surprise that this is the exact passage Jesus later pointed to as the single greatest commandment. So just think for a second about the kind of social revolution this implies. If listening and understanding are your highest values, then your ultimate hero isn't the strongest warrior or the richest king, it's the teacher. This is a society that's challenged to put education above everything else, to see its schools as its most important fortresses. It creates a culture where study and debate aren't just for academics, they're seen as essential for the survival of the nation itself. Okay, so we've got this foundation of listening and learning. How do you actually build a political structure on top of that? Well, this is where Deuteronomy gets truly radical. The nation isn't held together by a king's power or by an army, but by something much more powerful and also more fragile, a mutual promise, a society that's literally built out of words. If you look at history, societies are usually formed in one of two ways. First, there's the politics of power. One group conquers another, and you get a clear hierarchy, winners and losers. Or there's the politics of the elite, where a ruling class just sort of naturally emerges over time because of their wealth or family name. Deuteronomy comes along and presents this revolutionary third way, the politics of the word, where people consciously decide to come together and form a society based on a written agreement. So, a covenant. It's not a decree that's handed down by a ruler to his subjects. It's a mutual deal. It's a text that binds everyone, from the leader all the way down to the average citizen, to the exact same set of rules. And it's based on this profound and, for its time, totally astonishing idea that all the people making the agreement are fundamentally equal and have basic rights. It's basically an ancient version of the social contract. And you can just see the power of this idea echoing down through the centuries. I mean, you can draw a straight line from this covenant in Deuteronomy to the Magna Carta in 1215, which said that even the king isn't above the law. From there, you go to the Mayflower Compact, where people agreed to govern themselves in a new land. And it leads right to modern constitutions. All of them have this same DNA, the idea that a nation is defined by a set of shared ideals written down and agreed to by the people. All right, so we have a society that's founded on listening, and it's structured by a mutual agreement. But what's it all for? What's the moral purpose that's supposed to drive this whole system? Well, that brings us to the third and final pillar of this blueprint, a really unique and demanding idea of justice. The word is tzedek, and just like Shema, its meaning is really deep. It means justice, yes, but it also means righteousness, and maybe most importantly, a proactive kind of moral and social fairness. It's all about doing the right thing within the community. This is a really crucial distinction. Most legal systems are based on what we call retributive justice. You break a law, you get a punishment. The scales are balanced. But tzedek is about distributive justice. It's less concerned with just punishing what went wrong and far more focused on proactively creating a society that is right and fair to begin with. It's not just about what to do after someone steals. It's about building a system where the most vulnerable, the widow, the orphan, the stranger, are cared for, not as an act of charity, but because that's what a just society demands. And at the very core of tzedek is this powerful principle. In this system, nobody is above the law and nobody is beneath its protection. The king and the farmer, the citizen and the immigrant, the rich and the poor, everyone is held to the same legal and moral standard. This idea of impartial justice, which is a cornerstone of so much of modern legal thought, finds one of its earliest and clearest expressions right here. So what's the end result when you build a whole civilization on these three pillars? A culture of deep listening, a politics based on a mutual promise, and a relentless pursuit of moral justice? Well, the historical record gives us a pretty clear and compelling answer. When you look at civilizations that were built on brute force and conquest, like the Roman Empire, their lifespan is impressive, sure, but it's ultimately limited. Their strength was in their armies. But a civilization built around a text, around a portable covenant that you can carry with you, has shown this just staggering resilience. Despite being conquered, exiled, scattered, the intellectual and moral framework from Deuteronomy allowed a culture to survive for more than 3,000 years. Its real strength was never in its military, but in its ideas. And this brings us right to the core warning that's embedded in this whole blueprint. The text basically argues that when that moral foundation, that commitment to justice, to tzedek, to taking care of each other, when that starts to erode and it gets replaced by pure self-interest, that's when the covenant breaks. Trust disappears, the social fabric just unravels. And that, it suggests, is how great civilizations always begin their fall. And so that leaves us with a pretty profound and maybe a little uncomfortable question for our own time. If this ancient recipe for a resilient society depends so heavily on a moral foundation and mutual trust, what does it mean for us today, in a world where that very foundation often seems to be cracking? The question isn't just some academic exercise, it's a real challenge to the future of our own societies.